Prior to the Black Panthers being brought down, they tried to run Bobby Seale for mayor. If they had done this earlier, the Black Panthers would still be around today. The Black Panthers were very good at gaining public support with a unique aesthetic and bold language. The problem was they were brought down by Hoover and Nixon. If an organization does not want to be brought down by the state, they need to have influence. Only by electing sympathetic individuals can this happen. Yet these individuals need public support. They cannot get elected if they aren't voted in, and advocacy is a full-time job. You need somebody controlling one of the three branches of government, and you need somebody outside illuminating the problems so that politicians trying to change things get elected. During the Civil Rights era, you had Thurgood Marshall on the inside working, in that case, the judicial branch. With the squad up north and Stacey Abrams working in Georgia, we now have folks in the legislative. Our enemies control the courts, so our situation is reversed. In the 30s, when Marshall began his career, racists controlled the executive and legislative. So he went through the court system. In modern times, racists control the courts and executive, but we have the legislative. Doesn't matter. The legislative branch isn't any worse than the judicial. The whole point of having three branches is so that no group controls everything. It was created to stop despots like Trump, or in the 60s, the Klan. And we can overcome the modern fascists. I remember people complaining some years ago that there should be term limits for Supreme Court judges. People also complain about dark money and gerrymandering. All we really need to do, though, is get rid of the Electoral College. The other stuff doesn't really advantage the other side any more than it does us. We talk a lot about money in politics, for instance, but Nina Turner had a lot of cash at her disposal. It is true that there are individuals who can contribute far more money than they should be able, but that's capitalism. Dark money is just a symptom. Donating money really isn't the issue. To me, donating money is as valid as voting and shouldn't be taken away. Rather, we should go through social services to ensure nobody has more money than they are entitled to and aren't donating any more than what everybody else is. Of course, a big problem of getting people elected is that people think both parties are the same, and I've already gone over why that's not the case. However, I want to talk about how you get people to vote, not just for people like the squad, but also people like Joe Biden, who hardly inspire confidence. Simply saying he's better than Trump is terrible. It's true, but people want to know what you're for, not just what you're against. If we don't want this nation to succumb to fascism, we need to make it clear that no progressive is available. If no progressive is available, people need to vote for Joe. People who I thought were pragmatic, like Sam Seder, have been attacking Joe constantly, and I know Joe sucks, but Sam, if you don't want more Jimmy Dores, you need to stop. He's contributing to Jimmy's audience, so then how do we get somebody like Bernie instead of Joe elected? Attack Joe, but do it during the primaries, not when midterms are on the horizon. The same principle applies. As I said, people want to know what you're for, not just what you're against. And that applies to Trump, but it also applies to Joe. Advocate Bernie and people like him, at least as much as you attack Joe Biden. In fact, do that exclusively. How many people honestly like Joe Biden, like online where Sam Seder is? You're wasting valuable time and energy when nobody online likes him very much anyway. He got elected because of boomers, and boomers, like himself, aren't going to be around in another decade. The youth are far more liberal and are going to make up a bigger part of the electorate with each passing year. Rather, with our very limited resources, what you should do is focus on attacking Trump and advertising Bernie. Don't even mention Joe. Let the enemy of Joe be silent. Silence. He's already boring. The only attention he's getting is coming from the left. He'd do far worse in the primaries if people knew Bernie's name better, or one of the squad members. Instead, we're creating an electorate that hates Joe. Cool, but are they geared up to vote for the alternative? Bernie's old. We need to galvanize the public around a new figure. You can't make AOC or Ilhan valid simply by delegitimizing Joe, any more than Joe is validated by delegitimizing Trump. So how do we get people to vote for Joe? Well, you don't do it by listing his meager achievements, and you don't do it by tearing down Trump. Well, then how do you do it? Well, you focus on the person doing the voting. You make it in their interest. If I'm selling a used car, they probably won't buy it unless they really need it. But if I throw something else in and say, if you buy this now, later down the line, I'll get you a Mercedes. Well then, that's a much more enticing deal. Get an image of what the person wants in their head and get them to associate what they want with voting for Joe Biden. Don't try to hide the defects of Joe, but don't advertise them either. If somebody points out this car doesn't work, say, of course not. But you're not going to be with it very long. This car is a burden, but it's a burden you'll bear in exchange for a Mercedes. Joe Biden does suck, but by putting up with him, you'll get something better down the line. Use him as a pawn and a tool. How much less can a person be to you if you're using them for your purposes? Don't let an angry conflagration burn us all. Have that anger and use it in a constructive way rather than destructive. Too many people either tell anti-Joe folks to calm down or they talk about how much worse Trump is. My advice is a third way. Tell them it's valid to be angry, but in retaliation, use Joe as a servant to obtain what you want.